I prepared a series of short videos on the development of character, particularly for use to parents and to educators. I found in my 50 plus years of teaching, working with children, with teenagers, with young adults, young married couples, that nothing is more important in shaping good people than to emphasize character and the type of character that a person is. And this is not just my view. Even recently, I've read some meta research that suggests 25% of a person's achievement or successes are related to their cognitive abilities. And the other 75% is the kind of person they are, the kind of character they have. So when I talk about character, I'm really talking about two facets. One part is the habits and the attitudes that fit into growing, and that at each stage of life, you're led to a higher plane of life because you know how to apply yourself, you know how to work with other people. You have those attributes and those behaviors that allow you to grow stage after stage and become a better person. The second half has to do with, in the process of that growing, you grow in your responsibility and your commitment to help, benefit, serve other people. In other words, achievement alone, you can become very arrogant, narrow-minded. But once you see both sides, that as you grow in your own ability, your own selfhood, there's a sense of responsibility to others. Of course, when they're children, responsibilities to their siblings, to their parents, to their grandparents, gradually their responsibility to their classmates and their teacher, and later on the teams that they participate on, and after that is the companies that they work for or establish, the businesses that they run. So character has to do with the individual self flourishing and becoming as much as they can, and stage after stage going on higher planes of life, and then growing your commitment to serve other people and benefit other people. Now, like I said, this is not my idea. This idea of the growing self, the fulfillment of the self, is at least 2,500 to 3,000 years old. Whether you're from the East or the West, the philosophy and the religious training was comparable and is celebrated. The development of self, the growth of self, the possibilities of the self, and the care for the community. So whether you're from the East and you honor Buddha and Lao Tzu, or you're from the Middle East and you honor Zoroaster, or you're from the Mediterranean and you recognize the value that the Greeks gave, or the Judeo-Christian ethic through the Old Testament prophets and then the New Testament, there is this thought emerging of the value of the individual to become, to grow, to find out who they could be throughout their life, and to serve their world. This kind of historical thought, continued, right? It sort of honed at the time of the Enlightenment, which was a time of sharpening the understanding of reasoning, of science, of humanism, and of progress. In fact, our country, the United States, was built on many of the principles in the Enlightenment. And the core of it was, if you remember the Declaration of Independence, was we would be free. We would be free to pursue life, happiness, and the pursuit of liberty. Life's happiness and the pursuit of happiness. That forms, that tells the people in the country, grow, flourish. Now, as I said before, sometimes that can, if you don't attach with that the commitment to the people in your home, your society, your family, it can become an ugly thing. It can breed greed and selfishness and so on. But nevertheless, those thoughts are there. So when I talk about character, I'm looking at this historical perspective. The healthiest, the most beneficial to the whole planet is to have a kind of character that has been intended for 2,500, 3,000 years. Now, this is also not something new to 21st century, in that science has established this to be a fact, that human beings are wired, made, whatever you want to say, to grow and to become more and more on higher planes of life. Abraham Maslow, if you took any psychology courses in college, you surely learned about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. I think he first wrote in the 1940s, republished in the 1950s. And the peak of human need is self-actualization. Now, he's written more after that, but his writings were followed by William Damon. William Damon, who is one of the global leaders in human development, especially with adolescents. He wrote in the 80s and 90s and then again into early 2000s that research has shown that teenage years are the most important years to lead young people to explore purpose to their life. Why am I alive? And who do I serve? The same kind of research was turned up. You're probably familiar with the name Carol Dweck. She wrote Mindsets, but she also led all the research, much of the research. She was a point person on competency and motivation. And her research explained that human beings seek to become competent in their world. And that's where self-worth comes from, competency. So you got to get better at stuff. Whether you're a little child or you're a teenager, you're on a pathway to what? To grow. That's what competency is, to be able, little by little, to more and more master your world. In the early 2000s, there was a researcher named Martin Seligman. I think he's at the University of Pennsylvania. Sort of put together the idea of positive psychology. And in that book, he calls that this being the age for children as the age of flourishing. That's how we're wired. We're wired, we're programmed, if you want to use that kind of language, to grow and to thrive and then to serve our fellow human beings. Like I said at the beginning, the collective research has shown that success and even happiness in life is 25% related to your cognitive abilities, but 75% related to the character that you are. Why do I bring this up and now? Especially because there's lots, for our children, there's lots of compromising influences that instead of telling them, become somebody, grow, get involved, work, do better. Where can we get our entertainment? Terry Cross, who's one of the editors of one of the gifted magazines, he's a professor at the University of Indiana, said the metaphor for life in the first half of the 20th century was life is achievement. And our heroes were Jackie Robinson and Dwight Eisenhower and these great leaders who made so much out of a very common life, but they grew and they became wonderful people. But he says the second half of the 20th century, the metaphor was life is entertainment. And all exercises of work and growth, they're all put to the side, all to get over as quickly as possible so that we can be entertained. Well, I think we know our children face this all the time, the cheapening influences that take away their time and energy that they could live for a higher plane of life and to grow. So it's in this context that I'm going to give these few talks. I hope you would be touched by it, to realize I want my kids, I want my students to reach for the sky. So by the time they're a teenager, they're heading somewhere. Then the influences come. They don't overwhelm the children. They don't take away their life with cheapening influences that don't let them become what they can become. Well, thank you for listening, and I'll continue in the next one to talk about in a little more detail, practically, how do we do this?